So I think what we need to look at when we look at the data and we look at the post-GFC, post-financial crisis period, what we've seen is during the time when globalization has actually been in retreat, what's happened? The economic pie is smaller, growing more slowly. Productivity is lower. Productivity growth is slower. Inequality within countries has gotten worse, much worse. So this notion that globalization worsens inequality and undermines productivity, that's not what we see in the data. What we have failed at, to the extent that policymaking is the we is the policymakers, what policymakers failed to do was to address transition and distribution. During those golden years of globalization, where we had rising global engagement, deepening global engagement across goods, across services, across financial flows, increasingly on data, cross-border people flows, that did not come with no problems. The problems were, yes, there were jobs lost, there were businesses going bankrupt, and the transition was not addressed. How to get workers into new jobs. Some countries do a better job than others. How to get a worker into a new job. How to help a business make a transition to producing a different product. That type of domestic policy effort was left to sort of the market to make it work. And the market didn't make that work. So the transition was not addressed. Because transition was not addressed, you ended up with poor distribution. That's where the inequality comes from. You had winners, and they did better. And you had losers, and they did worse. So the failure of distribution and transition, the failure of policies to promote transition and distribution. We didn't use wisely the golden era of global integration. But now, the moving towards protectionism, you give up all the gains, then you have no ability or a much more challenging environment to engage with the transition and distribution, which are still problems today. So you have a small global, to the extent that we retreat from global engagement, the economic pie is smaller. That makes it more challenging to engage the type of policies that are necessary for transition and distribution. Smaller pie does not make it easier to distribute it. And the financing for transition is even more challenging. So the essential question is how to have the gains from globalization and ensure that they are widely shared by having the domestic policies of transition and distribution. It's not something that is easy to do, but it is something that can be done.